Back to the program. As promised, we're joined now by Liberal MP Dr Andrew Laming, live out of Canberra. Thanks very much for being there.
G'day, mate. Good to be with you.
Let's first talk about George Christensen. He's resigned as the Chief Whip of the National Party in the Parliament. Who in their right mind puts a maverick in a Chief Whip role responsible for discipline in the first place?
Well, I can understand Canberra giving it their best shot, but Christensen is above that. He's not going to be taking baubles in exchange for silence. And I reckon his electorate should be absolutely delighted. And I think most Australians love pollies who walk away from the sweeteners and speak their mind. And I mean, clearly Christensen's one of the few pollies around the country who's doing it unapologetically. It's actually an honour to have these kind of guys in your party room. You look across at the Labor Party and there's no one like that.
See, that's not an unfair point. So when the Prime Minister uses the party room today to say we must stick together, you obviously disagree with that. People like George Christensen have an important role to play.
I don't think he was talking about George. I mean,
who do you think he was talking about?
National Party self-made. He'll be talking
Dr.
about
Laming,
people
who do you think he was talking about?
Leadership.
You think he was talking about Tony Abbott?
Taking aim at his leadership, but people who aren't talking about issues that matter to people. So Christensen is on about that. He's talking about low-income earners and pensioners and veterans and, you know, people moving in on farming land and not looking after exporters. So they're the people that feel like we're the government that should be representing them, and there's a wide range of views. Christensen is representing them. I mean, these National Party MPs are mostly, you know, self-made individuals who speak their mind, and Christensen's probably the lead of them. Coming from the more vocal end of the Liberal Party room, I think it's brilliant that he's going to keep speaking freely, and definitely that's not the type of person Malcolm Turnbull is talking to. Christensen has to keep saying this because he's playing a game at home, Peter. He loses his seat if he doesn't. And you've got to think about this. Those who lose their seats to One Nation are the slow-moving beasts who don't respond to this clear and present danger in the Australian politic.
As you just put it, he's playing a game at home. Is that all he's doing, just playing games to try to win or curry favour in his electorate?
Oh, look, I use that term, but look, let's be honest. If you're not doing that in strong One Nation areas, you're gone. We know that from the last election. We know it from when One Nation was here before. They have to be in front of the pack and speaking freely and frankly. You can actually argue whether that makes much difference in Canberra. Those local voters will support a mainstream MP if they're speaking out and doing what's expected. They actually don't care necessarily what's happening in Canberra or voting on the floor. They just want a bloke who's speaking their mind. And Christian is clearly, and MPs around George need to be mindful. Guys like George will survive. The others need to make sure they do too, including Labor MPs.
Yeah, I suspect that's not an unfair point, Dr Laming. Let me go back to the issue, though, of what Malcolm Turnbull said in the party room about the need to stick together. You made the point before that you think he was talking to people who were basically having a shot at his leadership. Do you think that there are people in the Liberal Party that are quite obviously doing that, having a shot at Malcolm Turnbull unhelpfully and his leadership?
Well, that's all in the eye of the beholder, but certainly, you know, people who take on individuals down here with no real policy basis. I mean, people who aren't necessarily pushing a better policy for the nation. It's all about personal advancement for them, and they figured out the best way to do that is to, you know, cause trouble. That's a perennial challenge in a Westminster democracy, and that can be, you know, expected from time to time. It's the measure of the individual as the leader, how they deal with it. And look, I think everyone thought 2 weeks ago, you know, Malcolm Turnbull very firmly put a line in the sand over, you know, Bill Shorten's tactics. And today you've seen it within the party room, which is a reminder we may be behind in the polls, but we're delivering at nearly every front. Anyone who's been here more than 5 minutes, Peter, knows that there's a lot of stuff moving through this parliament that wasn't happening even in safer parliamentary and prime ministerial times. So Turnbull's getting the marks on the board. It's not reflected in the polls yet. Let me be honest. Whatever will determine the next federal election, Peter, has not yet happened. We are a long way away. We've got a lot of time to adapt to changing circumstances. And honestly, I'll tell you this and you can remember it later, is Labor responding to these threats? Because at the moment they have no answer to One Nation. And I can tell you, yet to be released polling out of Brisbane is showing One Nation level with Labor in Labor-held state seats. They are in for a massive shock because we've got no idea where these preferences will flow.
Is it your view, I mean, you're a Queensland MP, is it your view that after the next state election, if the LNP win enough seats that with One Nation's help they can form government as a minority government in a form of alliance, coalition, call it what you will, with One Nation, is it your view that that should be on the table?
Well, it's a good question in my view. My expectation is that, of course, with the current parliament being in Queensland almost perfectly balanced and One Nation arriving like a steam train, you've now got 3 players, not 2. Yes, whoever governs will need the support of at least one other party. I can tell you, it won't be a Labor-Liberal coalition, so One Nation has to side with someone. Correct, it'll be a minority government most likely, and we've got this awkward challenge to do what's never been done before, is operate a minority government in Queensland with the support of a party you're not in coalition with. Very tricky.
So how does that work, though? I mean, could you envisage the LNP in your home state deciding to enter some sort of formal alliance or coalition with One Nation, or would it be more arm's length than that, where they simply guarantee supply, for example? One Nation, as I understand it, are saying up in Queensland that they would demand seats around the cabinet table where they'd help somebody form government. Should that be on offer?
Well, it's really not up to me to comment on how that government might form itself. It really is the decision of those up in Queensland. But you can imagine it will be utterly reliant, the functionality of whatever this unstable dimer would be, is 2 leaders able to talk and communicate. I think Pauline Hanson has so much to lose. She's been there before and seen everything evaporate because they couldn't function within Parliament and they lost their seats the next election. One Nation never want that mistake again. They'll be working far more constructively to make sure that not only they're a part of legislation that needs to be passed and not to be deliberately obstructive, but where they can have some impact that Queenslanders will appreciate, they want One Nation to stand up and say, no deal unless this is fixed. And if we have a coalition LNP leader wise enough to work with One Nation in that respect, then potentially that could work.
All right, let's talk about some policy, Dr. Laming. I want to get your thoughts on penalty rates. Is there any chance, in your view, that the government will decide to overturn the Fair Work Commission ruling on penalty rates?
Look, I don't see it at all. I mean, at the moment, all of the focus is on this extraordinary flip of Academy Award performance, where Bill Shorten has been announced, and as someone who supported this entire process for years, process that he set up, your viewers know all of this, and they've pulled the name out and said Bill Shorten supporting the decision. No, incorrect. It's La La Land. No, it's not. It's Bill not supporting the decision. Now, convincing punters that that's important is going to be very challenging. But in the end, this is a decision by the experts who took every submission known to humankind. The PC's gone through all of this. These are reductions to penalty rates, no doubt, but overwhelmingly a chance to build employment opportunities for our most unemployed youth looking for openings. I mean, that's the true gain in this change, new people getting a start. And we also have in Queensland unions actively trading away penalty rates, and you just have to look up the website to see it. In my own area, Labor are defending penalty rates removed in Coles and Woolies because they struck an EBA with the union. It's okay to take away penalty rates according to unions as long as the unions are doing it. And that's the subtle difference. And we saw Brendan O'Connor last year bringing down a low-income worker. Same deal, saying she was thousands of dollars worse off. She wasn't. It was a Labor-approved EBA. It's just that the unions in Queensland didn't like the unions New South Wales deal.
But all of this in context, are you really that surprised that Labor have shifted ground on this and decided that they're prepared to overrule the Fair Work Commission, given that your side decided to make overruling judgments around abolishing the Road Transport Safety Tribunal, overruling Fair Workers, I believe it was, in relation to voluntary firefighters out of Victoria? I mean, governments do this, and governments backflip. We've seen plenty of backflips by this government. Now we're watching a backflip on the Fair Work Commission by Bill Shorten. So what?
So there's an important difference, Peter, there. Of course, we expressed our reservations and opposition right through the process, OK, and then sought to overturn it when it became reality. Very different. Bill Shorten actually setting up the process, mandating the 4-year review, including penalty rates in the analysis, appointing 4 of his 5 mates to the group that made the decision, and only after the decision's made, backflipping. And, fair-minded Aussies are going to say, look, at some stage you may not like the cricket match, but we do respect the umpire. Clearly, Bill Shorten doesn't. He'll trade anything to make a point. Yes, we've got a massive fight on our hands, because every time penalty rates change, it is, of course, great concern to Australians and a majority of them.
Do you, though?
So we're going to have to deliver economically.
But do you like the decision by the Fair Work Commission yourself? Do you think it's a good decision?
Absolutely. It was the right decision because, you know what, I don't agree with everyone who made a submission, but I trust the experts to consider and synthesise all of those inputs and come up with a decision that could have gone my way or may not have.
Well, can I ask you, though?
Supporting the decision.
OK, so you like the decision. A lot of business groups have made the point, as did the Fair Work Commission, as to why they made the decision, why it is a good one. But government ministers haven't exactly been on the front foot, been as prepared to declare that they like the decision, Dr Laming, as you just did. The Prime Minister got the closest, I thought, in question time yesterday. Michaelia Cash, when she had her media conference, made out like this decision is on Labor's head because of their rules. It didn't sound like she even liked it, but she wasn't going to get in the road of it, and she tried to pin it on Labor. Why won't the government do what you're doing? Ideologically, Liberals are supposed to be big on IR reform. Why won't ministers do what you've done as a backbencher and actually just stand up and say, you know what, we back this decision, we think it's a good decision, we like it, not just almost meekly say, well, it's independent, so, you know, we're not going to get in the road?
Two reasons. I mean, politically, obviously, we're letting Bill Shorten take all the limelight for his flip, and we don't need to be distracting that. But secondly and pragmatically, look, these are raw wounds. They've never healed since work choices. Constantly two trenches here battling away in Canberra. People have had a gutful of it. Peter, if a decision is made by a respected independent umpire, some of us just have to stop inflaming those wounds and respect that call. Australians just want solutions and then move on, let them hit the ground, see if they work, reassess if they don't. So Australians want us to move on, decision made, and clearly Bill Shorten can't do that.
All right, Dr Andrew Laming, always appreciate your insights. Thanks for the chat.
Pleasure.